Hey YouTube, Vinny M here and welcome to another video here on the channel. Today we have another World War II reenacting informational video for you. And in today's video, we are doing the third and final part in a three-part series on World War II lighters. In part one, we covered the Ronston and Evans lighters. In part two, we covered the Dunhill and Parker service lighters. And today, in part three, we will be covering the Black Crackle lighters. Notice I did not say Black Crackle Zippos, I said Black Crackle lighters. That's because all 5 of the lighters in front of you came in a Black Crackle finish in World War II, but only one of the 5 is actually a Zippo. We will take each one of these lighters, look at it up close, and look at its features so that you can see how they differ from each other, since all of these are a very similar design. We will then look at any marketing that is available from that time period that I can find to show you, as well as patent information and anything the company had happen in its history during the World War II time period that is of note or interest. First up, we have the Zippo. The lighter we're going to be looking at is a reproduction of the 1941 model Black Crackle Zippo. What you need to know is that in the early 1940s, you could still get the chrome-plated Zippos before they went to the Black Crackle finish. And both of these early 1940s models were very round. That is different than what they looked like before, because leading up to that, they were very square, like this one. You can see how different they are in shape. But this rounded shape only lasted a little while, because in 1942, they went back to a square shape. I don't have an example of that square shape, but you'll see it in the photos. It looks closer to these modern Zippos we're used to today, where it's still got some round curvature to it, but the corners are just a little bit more square than on the early 1940s one, but again, not nearly as square as the 1930s one. So that's something that I needed to explain, because you will see Black Crackle Zippos that are this shape, and you'll see ones that are more this shape. They are both correct. It just means one is an early one and the other is a later one. With the Zippo design, when we went to that Black Crackle finish, the finish is actually lead based. So it's actually the lead in the paint that allows it to have that crackled texture to it. It has a 4-barrel hinge, and that's all that's visible on the spine. When we open it, it opens all the way with lots of room to light your smoking item, be it a cigar, cigarette, what have you. When we take the insert out, though, there's no integrity to the case, because all that's in there is a little brazen plate to catch the foot on the insert. So without the insert, Zippo cases can't stay shut. Now, looking at the insert, the Zippo insert is a stamped insert. It is a single stamping of metal that's folded in half, and both halves come together at the back. They braze it together. When they do that, they pin the foot in place that locks the lid, and they pin the wheel in place for the striker. Now, the wick on World War II Zippos is asbesticized, as they called it, meaning it uses asbestos to make it last longer. Zippo inserts are marked on the outside with the Zippo branding and so forth. They were in World War II as well, but it didn't quite look like this. The bottom of the insert has felt over it. You lift the felt and you pour in your fluid, and then you have a little screw right here which accesses your flint so that you can replace it. Insert goes in the case easy, and that foot does all the work to lock it in place and give it that Zippo sound that we're so used to. Let's look at the information I can find on the Zippo. The first thing that we need to understand is that Zippo didn't invent their lighter from scratch. They actually modified an Austrian lighter that already existed called the Hurricane lighter. Their patent, seen here, called for essentially making the lighter more square and adding a lid that stayed on so you didn't fumble with 2 pieces when you went to use it. Here we see the World War II Black Crackle model, and we also see the shape of this and its box. You see the shapes do vary depending on whether it's early 40s or later on, and the boxes have black writing, which actually indicates it contains a black lighter. You see, there was a red model, which you see here with these two repros. Here are original red and black models. They were available with these emblems on them, although we don't usually see those still attached today. You notice the box for the red one has red writing, and the box for the black one has black writing. You may be wondering, why was there a red model? Well, as you can see by the emblem, it was for tankers. So the story goes. The red was allegedly easier to see if you dropped it in the dark environment of a tank. But you have to be careful. Red ones are incredibly rare. This one looks original. It's beat up and everything. But it's a confirmed reproduction, and we know that because the person that made it told us how they made it. So you have to be extremely careful with the red ones. The red Zippo might be the most elusive of them all. Then you have Zippos like this, which are red that aren't crackled because this is a theater made. In the literature, the advertisements we see from the time period, we see these lighters being available with those attachments on them, as you just saw on the Air Corps one, and we see them without. The marketing usually always says that Zippo dedicated their production entirely to the war effort, but this Ronson advertisement says the same thing. Now, people believe that Zippo was standard issue. Why would Ronson also be dedicating all of their manufacturing to the war effort if Zippo was the only standard issue? Well, the fact is, no lighter, according to the quartermaster, was standard issue. Here I'm searching the equipment catalog for the quartermaster in 1945. And as I search these various words, lighter, windproof, what have you, nothing comes up except for windproof jackets, except for matches. There is not a single lighter in the catalog, but there are matches and match cases in the catalog. And what that tells us is that none of the lighters from the time period were actually standard issue. Now, that doesn't mean the Army didn't buy them. It means they were not a standard issue item, meaning it was not issued to every single individual soldier in the U.S. Army. If we look at the World War II GI Collector's Guide, we see several lighters. Now, the Bowers doesn't say that it was a private purchase, but the Dunhill does. We know the Bowers was a private purchase. Here we see a Berkeley beside a Zippo, and it says the Berkeley's private purchase, but it doesn't say that for Zippo. Here we have an Evans, which it says is private purchase. So while it shows all of these lighters as military items, it does leave some questions about standard issuance. In this article from the World War II Museum, we see that there's a statement. In Army PXs all around the world, where a batch comes in occasionally, there are long waiting lists. This indicates that the Zippos are being sold in the PX. It makes no mention of them being a standard issue item. And when we use a little bit of common sense when we think about it, standard issue means that every single person got one. Now, we know that not every person got a Zippo because the military has all these other versions of the Black Crackle lighter, plus the service lighters, plus the Ronson lighters. We know Ronson was dedicating all of its manufacturing to the military just like Zippo was. If we look at the end of this article, there's a statement about the 50 others went like hotcakes. I found myself equipped with a wonderful weapon of winning friends and influencing people. This means people were buying them, not that they were being issued. And this is on a very reputable website, the World War II Museum. And it's not the only one that gives us an indication of this issue. Here on this website all about Zippos, it tells us that Zippo reached their 1 millionth lighter in 1942, and that 5 years later, that number was tenfold. 10 times 1 million is 10 million. 5 years after 1942 is 1947. They didn't reach 10 million lighters until 2 years after World War II was over. There was 16 million U.S. service members during World War II. During the actual World War II time period, they only produced enough Zippos to equip about half of the U.S. military. There had to be another supplemental lighter if these were standard issue. But here in this article, it tells us they were not supplied by the government, and neither were their fluid or other components, but they were bought in PXs and BXs and received from back home and other sources. If we look at Zippo's actual website, through their history, and we go down past the 1930s lighters into the 1940s lighters, it tells us that they were for military personnel only. So at least we know who wasn't getting them, the civilian market. Next up, we have Berkeley windproof lighters. This Berkeley in front of you is an original World War II Berkeley black crackle finished lighter. If we look at the Berkeley, the lid and the base are held together by a 3-barrel hinge with externally visible rivets that hold it in place. The Berkeley opens well past 90 degrees. There are pieces of spring steel that are tacked into the base and the lid, which allow it to close and open and have its own integrity. So you can't flick it closed, and when it's closed, you can't flick it open, even without an insert in it. The insert on this is kind of like a one-piece tank, if you will. It's all sealed. It has a fill port and a flint port. In the bottom, it says Flashlight Company of America, Jersey City, New Jersey, made in the USA, Berkeley windproof. The chimney is all molded into this tank style insert, and then the flint is pinned into it. It probably has an asbestos wick, but I do not know for sure when it comes to the Berkeley. But the paint on the case is most definitely a lead-based paint, since that's how they got these original Crackle paints to work. When they made them and it was heated, the lead would create the wrinkles in the paint. So if it's ever an original black Crackle lighter from that time period, the paint is to be considered lead-based. Let's look at the information I can find on Berkeley windproof lighters. Here we have the instructions that came with the Berkeley lighters because I can't find their patent. Here we see the full package as it would have been received, the lighter, the box, and those instructions folded up. Berkeley was about the hardest of all the lighters to find information on for this video. Here we see a World War II time period ad. This is actually 1941, before they went to the black Crackle. You saw that it had engravings in it. Here's another one from that same time period. This is 1941 as well. And then we have post-war ads. This is in 1945, right after the war, showing a price tag that the other two did not have. So this indicates that they're being sold to the civilian market. $2. This is a 1947 ad right here. And then I don't know the date on this one, but it's post-war, showing $2, and it's from a catalog. Next up, we have the Zephyr or Zypher windproof lighter. This one is an original World War II lighter, and it is the only one that I have the original box for. This lighter is actually more of a green color. That's kind of common. If you watched part 1, you probably saw that the Evans Crackle finish lighters were green, and that is the case here with this Zephyr as well. The Zephyr does not have a hinge visible on the back. The hinge is a pin that goes through both sides, and there's a little cut here so that the lid and the base can connect each other. It rises up to only 90 degrees. It will not go any further than 90. The lid inside is stamped Zephyr Galter Manufacturing Company, Chicago, Illinois. A piece of spring steel makes the lid work, so it has its own integrity. Whether the insert is in it or not, it will stay open or closed. This is a lead paint. The insert has wool-like material on the bottom that you lift to fill it. You have your flint that goes in right here. The windscreen or chimney, whichever you'd like to call it, is actually a bent piece of metal that's stamped, and then it's held to the top of the insert by 2 rivets. So the insert is actually made in multiple pieces on this one. Then your striker wheel is pinned into it with your flint coming up from the bottom, like so. Just like the others, expect an asbestos wick, and we already know that the paint is probably lead, so be careful with that. Let's have a look at what information I could compile on Zephyr. Here we have the patent for the Zephyr lighter, as well as the instructions that were on the back of some of the boxes they were sold in. Here we have an advertisement for the lighter, showing it to cost $1. And then yet another advertisement. Here we have a wartime advertisement showing the black Crackle version. Notice it does not show a price for the lighter. Next, we have the Park Sherman Storm King. This one is original, but it is not a black Crackle finish because it was made just after World War II. The Park Shermans incorporate a 5-barrel hinge on the spine with 2 rivets clearly visible on the exterior. The bottoms of their cases are marked Storm King, made in the USA. In much the same location we would expect the markings on a modern Zippo. The lids open all the way. If we take the insert out, we see that there is a rivet on a plate holding the hinges together and a rivet on another plate, which is what gives it its rigidity when it's closed. It does not have any rigidity to it without the insert. If we look at the insert, it is kind of strange because part of the space right here that could be used for fuel is actually just a channel which has a piece of spring steel in it, which interacts with that piece of spring steel in the lid to give it its ability to close and lock shut. The tank has your typical fiber over it with cotton underneath. Has your port for your flint. The chimney on these is attached somehow to the top of the tank, but I'm not entirely sure how. I don't know if it's brazen or how. I do not see any rivets or anything holding it to the top of the tank, but it is clearly a separate piece. The striker wheel is pinned, probably an asbestos wick, as is to be expected. It is much harder to slide into the case than the others. It's a very tight fit and snaps into place. Let's look at the very interesting information I was able to find on the Park Sherman Storm King. Here we have the patent for Park Sherman, followed by some World War II advertising for the black Crackle finish Park Sherman, which, as is typical, is void of any price. Here we have a very nice spread showing the box, the instructions, the wrapper, the lighter, and the lighter fluid. Here we have another very nice surviving example, and then yet another showing that the black Crackle had park road on the chimney, unlike the civilian one. Now, this 1957 court case is where it gets really interesting. This is Park Sherman versus the United States of America. It alleges that $230,000 was received by a company called Petitioner, which is the same company as Park Sherman, between July 1, 1944 and July 30th, 1945. And that this sum of money was because of price adjustment for the sale of their lighters and PXs. It goes on to say that the Quartermaster General of the United States acquired lighters for all service branches, and that at a certain point they canceled all lighter contracts and turned over the responsibility to the Jersey City Quartermaster Depot to acquire lighters to be sold in the PXs of military bases. It literally says these lighters were resold in the PX of military bases. And I don't think that this is just specific to Park Sherman, because the government's not going to play favoritism when so many companies are offering the exact same product in the middle of wartime. I feel like what we're reading here is exactly how all of these lighters were sold and issued through the PX, not as standard issue items. It goes on to tell us that because of price adjustment, this company made too much money off of the sale of their lighters in the PX. The last lighter we have today, which I have a physical example of that we can look at, is that of the Windy windproof lighter. This one is a post-World War II example that is not black crackle finished, but it was available in black crackle finish during World War II. It has a 3-barrel hinge with the center barrel being bigger than the outer barrels and 2 pins that hold the lid and base together. If we open it, it opens all the way. Take the insert out. We have a piece of spring steel pinned in place for the lid and another one for the base, which allows it to close and maintain its integrity, staying shut even without the insert. The insert is a metal tank with a felt bottom that we fill under into the cotton. You have your flint access right there. It is engraved Hattawan Lighter Company Inc., New York, New York, made in the USA on the tank portion. The chimney is brazen to the tank as a separate piece, and the Windy is the easiest lighter to differentiate if you're looking at a group of lighters that have their lid open, because it is the only one with vertical oval cutouts in the chimney and the only one with the brand name stamped in the chimney, being Windy right there, although it is only on one side. The striker wheel is pinned into the chimney component, which again is a separate piece brazen to the top of the tank component. So it's made in multiple pieces. Let's look at the information I could compile on Windy windproof lighters. I couldn't find a patent for Windy, so we'll start with the packaging. It had probably the most elaborate package. And there are the vertical chimney cuts that are so distinctive of Windy with the word Windy. And here we can see what these things go for on eBay, typically a lot of money. They are the ones you find the most, however, over all of the others. And I actually bought this one right here today. I wish I would have had it for the video, but I'm not going to wait 2 weeks to film to wait on it. But this is a pretty typical price we see for the Windys right here, about $350, which is less than Zippo. As you can see from all of the lighters that we've went over, the black crackle lighter of World War II has quite a rich history. And whether you want to admit it or not, that history is not all centered around the Zippo brand. However, today, there is only one black crackle brand you can go out and buy brand new, and that is Zippo. In both the 1941 Repro variation or this modern variation, and this one has the pipe insert, which is also not from the World War II time period. Yet, despite the insert not being the World War II time period, and this not being the exact shape or make of the World War II model, it carries that heritage. And what I would like, if nothing else from this video, is for people to understand that while Zippo might be the most famous because it's still around today, it carries the heritage of more black crackle lighters than just itself. And we would be doing history an injustice if we did not remember the history of Zephyr, Park Sherman, and the others. Ultimately, I've provided a lot of evidence that shows you how these lighters were most likely used, how they were issued, and whether people want to accept it or not, until someone can provide me with a document that shows a quartermaster procurement contract and a issuance number in a quartermaster catalog for the Zippo lighter, it was a private purchase item. And as such, it is no different than the other lighters like it, which were also private purchase lighters. Hope you learned something from this video. That's all I have for you guys. As always, like and subscribe, and have a nice day.